going to go to the point because there are so many things that I would like to share with you this morning, and the time goes by too fast. So open your Bibles. We're going to go to the book of John, the Gospel of John, and we're going to be in the chapter 13. We'll read some other Bible verses, but we're going to stay mostly in the verses we find in this chapter. And as you know, this chapter, the beginning of this chapter, the first verses are talking about the Last Supper. And we find a scene that is if you try to analyze it, is impressive. You have Christ and the disciples alone. They are alone. He finds himself one more time alone with his disciples in a room. Nobody else is there. Christ's ministry, public ministry, is over. He's not going to be working for the people publicly anymore. Christ has terminated his ministry with the people, but not with his disciples. Like a soccer coach, a football coach, I love football, as Jonathan was talking the other day too, maybe it's the name. Just before, you have been training, but just before you get on the field, the coach will come to you and tell you the last sentences. That sometimes you think, those sentences, they are worth nothing. No, sometimes those last words are the most important ones. Before you go on the field, I have something else to teach you. A final instruction. And for me, perhaps the most important one. And if this lesson is not understood, probably will be difficult to be called Christians. Because if we look closely into the context, in verse number 3 of that chapter, we find a phrase that is very important in order to understand the context of everything else that is going to happen. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had given him all things into his hands. Everything is in his hands. And what does this imply? He has everything. This is the supreme moment. What this text is telling us is at that moment, all power was in the hands of Christ. He had the possibility to decide what I'm going to do right now. All the power, all the authority. He can do whatever he wants. Just before Christ's masterful lesson that we find in these verses, we are told that all the power was in his hands. He could do whatever he wanted. And the question is, Lord, what are you going to do with all this power that has been given to you? How are you going to use all this power? So we find all the disciples and Jesus at the table. And they were all of them there. You remember the 12 disciples. I'm not going to read them. You can find the names of the 12 disciples in Matthew 10, 2-4. All of them were there, the 12. They are chatting. They're talking in a nervous tone. Things are not going as usual. They're not going well. The 12, know something is going on. Jesus seems pensive, unease. Jesus doesn't seem like his usual outgoing personality. He talks, but he looks as if he has something in his mind. And indeed, he does. As he dines, as he eats with the disciples, Jesus knows that before long, Judas will sell him with a kiss. He knows it. He knows that Roman soldiers will come to arrest him. He knows it. And he knows that he will be before Herod, Annas, and Caiaphas, and Pilate in a few hours. He knows it. Within hours, he will be nailed into a cross. And the talk continues back and forth, and Jesus listens. And suddenly, without a word, he stands up. Without explanation, he removes his robe. We find that in verses 4 and 5. He removes his robe and wraps a slave's towel around his waist. He takes a pitcher of water, a basin, and goes to the end of the table, and he kneels down. Without saying one single word, he takes the disciples' feet. He shakes the dirt of the feet and begins to splash them with water, giving them a message. What he is doing is giving them a message. When they are clean, he takes the towel and dries those now clean feet. He approaches the next disciple and does the same. In the room, there is a sepulchral silence. No one dares to speak. They cannot believe what Jesus is doing. And the truth is that foot washing was considered an act of courtesy at that time. To us, what he did was strange and unusual. But in those days, washing feet was just what you did when someone came to your house. The roads of Palestine were dry and dusty, and when it rained, became a muddy swamp. Even if you left your house with your feet clean, completely clean, when you will come back, your feet will be again dirty. So it was common on those days to do several things to the one who came to your home. And as a greeting, the first they will do, I'm not saying we should do this, okay? But the first thing they would do is kiss the person that is coming to the house. And I have to say, I'm from Spain. Macho men, I don't know if this exists anymore or what, I'm from Spain. And I remember, I'm married with an Italian. And the first time I went to a church in Italy, it was kind of weird to me because every single man will kiss you. I said, what? Every single man will kiss you. It's fine. In Spain, I kiss my father or my brother, and that's it. But when I arrived there, every single man will kiss you. It's a way. In Italy, don't go to Russia. They do something different. So what they used to do when somebody came to the house, it was to give a couple of kisses, like a welcome. But the next thing, have you been in Israel, in Palestine? It's horrible, the dust, the sun, and all these dust in your face. Your skin becomes extremely dry. So they will get a little bit of oil, and they will put oil in your forehead and in your cheeks, so you will feel better. And the third step will be, they will call a servant. He will come to the door. He will kneel, and he will take off the sandals of the person and will start washing the feet. But what was not common was that the host of that place would wash the feet of his guest. No, nobody would do that. Washing dirty feet was the job of servants and slaves. And when the master of the house will arrive to the house, the slave will be there ready to wash the feet. The humblest servant would greet him at the door with a towel and water. But there was no servant in the upper room. A water pitcher? Yes. A basin and a towel? In the corner of the table. But not one touched them. No one moved. Each disciple hoped someone else would. Peter thought, man, John will do it. He's the youngest. He has to do it. But maybe John thought, no, Andrew will do it. Each apostle, each disciple assumed someone else is lower than me, so he will do it. And someone did it. Jesus, and when Jesus starts washing the feet, you could think, is he going to wash the feet of all of them? Jesus does not exclude any disciple. Although probably if we look at the disciples and we look at ourselves, maybe we would not have criticized Jesus if he would have overlooked Philip. When Jesus told the disciples that the crowd of 5,000 hungry people had to be fed, Philip said, we find it in John 6:7, it is impossible, we cannot do it. And the question is, what does Jesus do with those who questions and doubts his commands? He washes their feet. And then we find this incredible moment of this mother, and I imagine that probably you have some individuals in mind right now, that it says, Matthew 20 and 21 says, then the mother of the Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, what do you wish? What are you asking for? What do you want? She said to him, look at this. It's incredible. Grant that these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on the left in your kingdom. I know there's another 10 disciples, but I don't care about them. I just want to see my sons to the right and to the left. The rest, who cares? The mother of James and John presses for her sons to have a place of privilege in the government, as they saw, of Christ's kingdom. Looking for positions. And the question is, what does Jesus do when people use his kingdom for personal gain? He slides a basin under their feet. Peter stopped trusting Christ in the storm. In a matter of hours, Peter will deny to belong to Jesus and will begin his journey into hiding. In fact, the 22 feet will go away and leave Jesus alone facing his accusers. And the question is, have you ever wondered what God does with those who break his promises? He washes their feet. And Judas? Oof. The liar, the rat, the greedy one who sold Jesus to put some coins in his pocket, Jesus cannot wash Judas' feet. Not that one, no, please, not that one. If Christ washes the feet of his Judas, what should we do with our Judases? Do you have one or two in your life? We should wash their feet. Washing someone's feet is dirty, smelly, and humiliating. I'm going to share very quick an experience. I don't know how many of you are married, and I'm going to add to that, happily married, okay? How many of you are happily married? I have pictures, yes, I am happily married. I will choose my wife, the one that I have right now, I will choose her again. Yes, after 28 years, I will choose her again. And I have pictures of my wife in my cell phone, pictures of my daughters, but the one thing that I don't have in my cell phone is a picture of my wife's feet. You have one? Not of my wife, please, okay? I'm asking about yours, all right? Have you ever taken a picture of the feet of your, I don't know, husband or wife, or, look, I'm so in love with my wife. Look at this, bam, the feet. The feet, they symbolize, it's probably the most dirty place of our body. For some individuals, it's the mouth. But anyway, also the feet. And I remember, when I was 14, let me share with you a short story. I'm going to go fast. A very short story. I was 14. My grandmother was living with us in the house because my grandfather died. And she was very traditional, but traditional. She invented the word traditional. She was wearing black, but absolutely everything. You look at her and it was black. She will never remove, if she could, the shoes or the socks. She was always wearing something, and imagine during summertime, at least in Spain at that time, they were not used to get showers because in Spain 40, 50 years ago, showers, no, come on, you will wash yourself like a cat. So my grandmother, she was not used to take showers. So what did she do to clean herself? Like a cat. But to hide the smell and the sweat, she used this powder, this white powder. In Spain is talco, I don't know the name in English. Talco, something like that, yeah? So she used that everywhere. Also in her feet. I didn't know that until this thing happened to me. My wife, my mom, she was always taking care of my grandmother. But she was working, taking care of us. One day she said to me, Jonathan, please, I need you to help me. I cannot do everything. I said, okay, Mom, what do you want me to do? And she said, can you cut the nails of your grandmother's feet? I discovered in between the toes Tutankhamun. When I started to cut the nails, the smell, guys. I hope COVID would have come earlier. My hands, you know what is touching those feet and cutting the nails with all these things inside. I washed my hands 20 times and I could smell my grandmother's feet as I was laying on the bed. Because the reality is that feet are dirty, smelly, and to touch them or do something to them, it's humiliating. But washing feet responds to a real need for continuous cleaning. Simon, when Jesus approached him, Peter, I like Peter, sometimes he opens the mouth too much, but he's a good guy. When it comes to Simon Peter, he asks Jesus and says, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? I mean, are you crazy? Are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize, you do not understand right now what I'm doing to you, but later you will understand. No, Peter said, you shall never wash my feet. So the teacher is having a student that is a little bit stubborn. You can't do this. It is the work of a slave. You are my master. You are my teacher. No, Lord, don't touch my feet. They are dirty. This isn't your job, Jesus. This is not your job. That's unworthy of what you represent. You represent something much bigger than that. What bothered them was not what he was doing. It was that he was doing it. Washing feet was acceptable as long as the person of lower class or position was doing it. But seeing the Son of God to do it, it was disturbing. How can he do that? But the thing is that this act removed his preconceived ideas. It destroyed his concept of status quo. And I have a question for you this morning. If food washing was common, and it was, and being that they had come together as friends, the question is, why hadn't they already washed each other's feet? But there's another question that is even for me more important, and is, why had any of the 12 had already washed Jesus' feet? Why they didn't? Okay, I could maybe, no, I would not accept, but I could understand, no, I'm more important than you are more important than me. But what about Jesus? They all consider Jesus more important than them. What were the disciples talking about at the Last Supper? They were talking, they were discussing. Jesus was listening to their conversations. What was the subject of their discussion? And the subject of the discussion after Jesus walking with them 3.5 years, they were discussing who is going to be the biggest. Because I deserve to be the biggest. I deserve to have the best position. They were fighting for a place. Jesus was about to be crucified, and they were arguing over who would sit on his left and right. The different ministry. I want education. No, I want housing. I want economy, They were discussing. And the truth, my friends, as long as we keep arguing about who is more important, we won't have time to do the real foot washing. Because washing your feet, acknowledging that they are dirty, is incompatible with wanting to always be recognized as the best. They cannot go together. In that room, there were a lot of proud hearts with dirty feet. They fought for a throne, but they didn't want to fight for a towel and a basin. And the question of Jesus is amazing. Do you really understand what I have done to you? And we find this question, I want to put it in comparison with John 13, 6-8, Peter is saying, Lord, are you washing my feet? He's asking. And then you find Jesus asking to them, do you understand what I have done to you? Question and question. But then Jesus says to Peter, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. if you do not allow me to clean you, you have no part in my kingdom. If you do not allow me to be the one that is cleaning your feet, even though you think that I am the master, I have to show you the real disciple that will enter the kingdom. And Jesus says, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. It is not enough to love the history in the Bible. I love history in the Bible. It is not enough to understand the plan of salvation as revealed in the scriptures, to understand it. It is not enough to agree that the king is worthy of your worship and that the rules of the kingdom are worthy of obedience. The master challenges us with this question: do you understand what I have done to you? And it is possible, an Adventist of third generation. Is it possible that after an entire life in the church, I still don't have a clear answer to Jesus' question? Is it possible? Are we going to keep fighting for positions, but not for a towel and a basin? I have seen this so many times. And I would like for all of us that we should start today showing the kingdom of heaven now, because it's possible. And if at some point in your life or in your ministry, you feel the need of looking down at the person next to you, or the person that is working with you, or somebody in your family, maybe your husband or your wife or your kid, your children, let me give you a piece of advice. Put your head down. Look at your feet. They're wet. They're wet. They were dirty. But Jesus kneeled down and cleaned them. This is how it looks, the kingdom of God. God bless you. Amen.